From the Greek philosopher and educator Aristotle, we get the familiar four elements model of the physical living world: earth, water, air, and fire. What is not so widely known is that these elements were further classified as follows. Earth and water were modeled as gravity elements, and air and fire were modeled as levity elements. Gravity was, in the physics of Aristotle, paired with levity, as down is with up. Here's an obsolete definition of gravity from the Oxford English Dictionary. The tendency to downward motion, regarded in ancient physics as a property inherent in certain bodies, opposed to levity, or the upward tendency ascribed, for example, to the element of fire. Note, it is not defined as a force. Therefore, gravity was taken to be this empirical regularity that we're all intimately, personally familiar with. Things more dense than air go down when we let them go. Also, things that were once alive move in the downward direction after they die. Gravity, like grave, same root word. Basic, non-controversial stuff. Not the action of a force, but an empirical regularity. Huge difference. We also observe that stuff lighter than air can move up, like balloons, dust, or smoke. These were all classified as levity phenomena. Also, living things often move or grow in the upward direction, like humans and trees. Thus, in the classical model, life was modeled as a levity phenomenon, as were light, mind, and lightheartedness. Thus, no theory of consciousness was lacking. Should an apothecary desire to increase the levity of a substance, he could grind it, thus making it lighter. Equally important, the surface area of the substance was radically increased, thus making it more volatile or susceptible to chemical reactions of various sorts, aka the fire element. In the modern era, such fine particulates suspended in solid, liquid, or gaseous media are called colloids. All biological forms are composed of colloidal substances, blood, lymph, sap, milk, etc., contained within semi-permeable membranes. In the 20th century, renowned physicist Wolfgang Pauli wrote, "In fact, colloids may be regarded as an important, perhaps the most important, connecting link between the organic and inorganic world, aka life as levity." Let's now rewind the historical tape to 17th century Italy. Galileo Galilei is widely known for something he didn't do: drop objects from the Leaning Tower of Pisa to observe their motion. What he did do, however, was to conceive and perform elegant experiments rolling balls down inclined planes to study motion under gravity conditions. He measured the time involved, first using his pulse, and then using a bucket of water with a hole in it, permitting drops to fall at regular intervals. Remember, this is prior to the invention of sufficiently accurate mechanical clocks. Thus, he was able to devise his famous equation, S equals kt squared, where s is the distance, k is a constant, and t is the time. The history that we are given tells us that this was the first mathematization of motion. This formulation is an example of kinematics, the geometrical study of motion without recourse to any forces or impacts, from the Greek kinema, meaning movement or motion. This was one of many astounding accomplishments of Galileo. 15 years after his death, the Accademia del Cimento, an early scientific society, was founded in Florence in 1657 by students of Galileo, Giovanni Alfonso Borelli and Vincenzo Viviani. Like the better-known Royal Society of London, which was founded 3 years later, its emphasis was on experimentation, the development of experimental instruments and standards of measurement. The Accademia del Cimento published a treatise called Contra Levitatem, Against Levity. It declared that science firmly based on observation has no right to speak of levity as something claiming equal rank with and opposite to gravity. This was likely due to the fact that levity phenomena could not be readily measured and mathematized like the phenomena of gravity. Therefore, they called for the exclusion of levity from the context. Apparently, this edit got major traction, as none of us are taught anything about levity in modern physics classes today. Everything that was explained in terms of levity, heat, biological life, light, consciousness, fire, smoke, dust, etc., must now be explained only in terms of gravity and randomly moving atoms and molecules. This is a tremendous loss, an unforgivable dumbing down of the explanatory context. As another example of the elegant helpfulness of the gravity-levity model, electrical phenomena were modeled as gravity-inflected levity. Magnetism was modeled as levity-inflected gravity. Let's now turn our attention to Isaac Newton. Newton published his Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy containing his law of universal gravitation in 1687, though he'd derived the equation much earlier. He did not discover this so-called law, he invented it. In his work, Newton used the term gravity in a totally different context. He did not invent the term, he redefined it. He gave it this new, totally non-demonstrable definition of a force of attraction between masses. He changed the usage of a centuries-old term, totally distorting the classical context. Newton's new definition of gravity was created for a spherical Earth, spinning and floating in an infinite heliocentric vacuum. In his book, The Re-Enchantment of the World, Morris Berman recounts the following excerpt from a letter Newton wrote to his friend, the Reverend Richard Bentley. It's enlightening with regard to Newton's own conception of his idea. Quote, "That gravity should be innate, inherent, and essential to matter, so that one body may act upon another at a distance through a vacuum, without the mediation of anything else, by and through which their action and force may be conveyed from one to another, is to me so great an absurdity that I believe no man who has in philosophical matters a competent faculty of thinking can ever fall into it." Steiner and Goethe scholar Ernest Layers, in his book Man or Matter, quotes the 19th century polymath John Ruskin on Newton, saying, "Take the very top and center of scientific explanation by the greatest of its masters, Newton explained to you, or at least was once supposed to explain, why an apple fell, but he never thought of explaining the exact correlative but infinitely more difficult question, how the apple got up there." The loss of levity is much like the loss of the flat, stationary Earth. Their losses radically diminish our real-time, natural, aesthetic, sensorial, commonsensical relation to our miraculous home.